Hello and welcome. I'm Fox Spears. I'm the Program Manager of Fellowships for First Peoples Fund. This video is intended to help you learn more about the 2025 Jennifer Easton Community Spirit Awards and the nomination and application process. And so the Community Spirit Awards, the things I'll be talking about, I'll talk a little bit about the awards themselves. We'll talk about eligibility requirements, the timeline for the 2025 application process. We'll talk about the selection process and criteria used, and then we'll also talk about how to apply. So there's the nomination, that's step one, and the application, that's step two. And then I'll give you my contact information in case you have any questions beyond what's covered here. So talking about the awards, I wanted to include this quote from a former colleague because I feel like it really helped give a sense of what the award's about. And that is, when people ask about the Jennifer Easton Community Spirit Award, we usually say this is not a resume award, but it is about how artists interact with their communities through their art. First Peoples Fund evaluates each applicant based on their relationship to their community and their role in carrying on the community's traditions through their particular art forms. And so again, this is a little different from a lot of other larger artist awards that are focused more on looking at what an artist has accomplished, usually within the formal art world. You know, what are their achievements? What other awards and recognitions have they received? That's not the focus of what we're looking at. We're really, again, looking at how they interact with their communities. We're looking at how they carry on cultural traditions. That's something I will probably talk about repeatedly just to really highlight that point, and that's the basis of this award, and that's also very important for the selection committee as they're reviewing applications. A little bit more about them. So I've got a couple things here that are included in the application guidelines, but I've included them here again just because I think they are important. So honorees are Native artists and or culture bearers who have worked selflessly throughout their lives to share their cultural knowledge and ancestral gifts with their communities. And the award is designed to support these essential bearers of cultural practice to carry forward their wisdom and help Native communities heal and thrive. Anything you see that I've underlined is just something to maybe keep in mind if you are nominating someone or filling out an application. These are just things that I want to stress that these are important things to consider as you're completing an application. I also wanted to include how we define culture bearer here, because that is a term that's used in the application. So culture bearer for us can be defined as someone who practices and carries forward cultural art forms and traditions. They selflessly bring the wisdom, beauty, and healing of our ancestors into our contemporary lives to heal the trauma of our people and Mother Earth. I think that's probably the main internal term that we use a lot that you would run into in the applications, so I felt it was important to share. A little more about the awards. So they're named after Jennifer Easton. She was First Peoples Fund's founder. The first Community Spirit Awards that First Peoples Fund gave out were in 2000, the year 2000. So this new application that we're working on for 2025, that'll be the 26th year that we have given out these awards. I believe the first year there were only 2 of the Community Spirit Awards given out, but at least for the last decade or so, we've normally given out 4 to 6 awards annually. Starting this next year in 2025, the award amount is increasing. So currently for 2024, it's been $25,000. Next year in 2025, this is increasing to a $50,000 unrestricted grant. And by unrestricted grant, we mean that there is no criteria that an awardee needs to complete in order to receive funding, or, so it's not project-based, and there aren't restrictions on how the money needs to be spent. So just so you're aware of what that means. This is, of course, this has a 2-step application process. So artists must be nominated, and it's not a requirement, but ideally I would say if they're nominated by a community member, that's probably going to be best in case it comes down to a close decision between 2 folks. And then there is also a second step where the application itself needs to be completed. And First Peoples Fund and the nominators help to plan a local community celebration in honor of the selected artists and culture bearers during their award year. So that's something that I don't think was necessarily made clear in previous years with the applications. So I wanted to make sure that folks know this. So part of also what we will do is we will normally go out into the community for the folks that are being honored and do a could be small, could be a little larger, but do some sort of recognition ceremony there in their community directly. Normally the nominator is also involved in helping to plan this. So if you are nominating someone, please be aware that that is something that you will likely be asked to do if your nominee is awarded or selected for an award. So for eligibility, nominees for the CSA, oh, and I should also say we use all these acronyms. So CSA, of course, is going to refer to Community Spirit Awards. And then I believe on the last slide, I used FPF. FPF is just what we'll refer to for First Peoples Fund. So those will be the two you might see. So nominees for this award must meet the following criteria. They should have demonstrated maturity in their field. They should be a continually practicing artist for a minimum of 10 years, and they should be an enrolled member of or provide proof of lineal descendancy from a US federally or US state recognized tribe, or be able to provide proof of ancestry as an Alaska Native or Native Hawaiian. I'll say that, most of the time, folks who've received this award in the past are often elders or folks that are, more mature in terms of their age. It is not unheard of for someone who's younger to receive the award. That has happened as well. We do have one of our honorees this year for 2024 is a little younger, but again, for those folks, they have been able to demonstrate that they started working within their medium at a younger age, so they have been doing that for at least 10 years. And as far as demonstrated maturity in their field, I think that can be, shown in a few ways. One, are they, how experienced are they with the mediums that they're working within? So it's clear that they're not new to those or at maybe more of a beginner or earlier level in those. I think also, how are they viewed by their community members? So this is where I think the nomination form and reference letters will help also demonstrate what are they doing, how are they seen by others. I also want to make sure I point out, so this note at the bottom, the award is given out to practicing Native artists of any medium. So this could be, music, dance, clothing design, basket weaving, beading, storytelling, and much more. It could be any artistic medium. And I want to clarify that this can be in both traditional or contemporary art forms, or both, I suppose, if people work within multiple mediums. I've had folks ask if they have to be a traditional artist. You do not have to. The questions may sound like they are geared towards that. And I would say if you're working in contemporary mediums, or you're thinking of nominating someone in those, really the thing to think about there is just, is their practice still based within, cultural knowledge, cultural life ways? How does that influence their work? Is that an important part of their work? And then, of course, also the community component. What are they doing within and for their community, and how are they working with other folks there? The timeline for 2025. So the nomination is the first part. The applications have opened. They opened on Monday, June 3rd. And then we will be accepting nominated artists through Monday, July 8th, right before midnight Mountain Time. So there's a little over a month there. The application itself, you'll see there's a little bit of time, I think about a week between. So we will spend some time reviewing, just making sure eligibility looks okay for folks. If we do have questions about something or need clarification, we'll be reaching out to get that. If there is an issue, we would let you know if we're not able to move along to the application portion as well, and give you an opportunity if you have a question about that. But the applications will then be sent out and open on Monday, July 15th. And those will be due, so the applications will close on Monday, August 19th, again, right before midnight Mountain Time. We'll be looking at making announcements to applicants on whether they've been selected or not in December of 2024, so before the end of this year. And then the award year that we're looking at is January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. Ideally, we'll be making the public announcement of who's received the awards in January. And the award year probably doesn't necessarily mean quite as much for this award. I think that applies probably more to our fellowships, since they have projects and there's a little more that they have to do. But just so you're aware that there is an award year for this. And then the selection process. So we will have a national selection committee. There's usually about 3 people on that are going to review the applications. We normally receive up to 100 applications annually, so this is pretty, competitive. But they'll review things in 2 stages. So they'll be going through doing their initial reviews and scoring, and then there's also a meeting where they'll be talking about finalists, and really kind of getting down into selecting who's going to be receiving awards. The honorees are selected based on their artistic practice, their lifetime commitment to building the strength of Native communities, and direct ties to their tribal community. Panelists are asked to consider individuals in their tribal communities whose primary strength is that they are selflessly passing on the traditions of their culture through their art practice. So I wanted to just give a little bit of insight into some of the things that we are telling our selection committee, some of the guidance we're giving them, so you also know what we're looking for. Again, the selection criteria. So of course, they need to meet those earlier eligibility requirements. And then these other 3 pieces are also included in the application guidelines, but I've put them here again just to emphasize they are deeply rooted with and maintain direct ties to their tribal community. They demonstrate an artistic practice that passes on the traditions and the life ways of the people. And they show a commitment to building the strength of Native communities by sharing their skills and talents with others in their respective communities. So how do you apply? Well, again, this is a 2-step application process and you must be nominated to apply. So the first step is that nomination. The nominator is encouraged to work collaboratively with their nominee to complete all the application materials before applying. And I underlined applying because I think it's probably more important for the application portion than the nomination, but certainly, ideally, you may talk to an artist before you nominate them as well. I think that's certainly a good idea. But before applying on behalf of another individual, the nominator must contact the nominee in advance to fully discuss the guidelines of the Jennifer Easton Community Spirit Award. I did want to include a note as well. If there are any issues with a nominator or a nominee's abilities to complete these applications online via Submittable, please contact me and let me know. If there's someone that's interested, but they have a struggle or a challenge there, I want to make sure that accessibility to the online application format isn't a barrier. So if that does come up for anyone, please reach out and we'll see if we can find a solution for you. So you're able to nominate someone or so an artist is able to apply. And I'll talk a little more about the application because the artists can, they're not required to apply themselves. The nominator can do that or work with them. So for the nomination form is in submittable. There's, of course, we're asking for, who are you nominating? We're asking some contact information for the nominator, who are you? How do we get in touch with you? And then there's going to be questions as well. So these aren't necessarily exactly worded exactly the same as on the application or the nomination form. But they're very similar, if not. So, why are you nominating the artist for the award? How do you know the nominated artist? And I believe that one may be a multiple choice where you can select from some categories. We ask how many years have you known them? And we do ask you to describe your relationship with the artist. We also ask, how is the artist strengthening their community through the practice of their art? So again, we're interested in their ties to their community, in their work with their community. And then what examples can you share of the artist's contributions and spirit of giving back to their community? I feel like I keep saying community, 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 and it's in the name of the award. So just trying to emphasize that a lot. I do also want to make a point here that the nominator filling out this form, your answers on this form will be reviewed by the selection committee along with the application. So please keep that in mind. It does also form an important part of the application. We certainly look closely at, who's nominating them? Why are they nominating them? What do they have to say about them? So if you're thinking about nominating someone, you may also want to talk to some other folks within your community about that, to decide who might be best to. I mean, if we receive multiple submissions for the same person, that's okay. But I would also say submitting multiple nominations is not necessarily something that will help someone, just because we want to be fair, and so we're not wanting to weight things by giving the reviewers like, well, this person has 3 nominations, so they're going to have all these forms. So we would be likely selecting just one form. If there are multiples, we may indicate that multiple people nominated them, but that's not, I wouldn't pursue that as a way to give someone an edge. I also will say here again, ideally the nominator is someone from within the artists and culture bearers community. And I say that mainly because, if it's coming down to a close decision between 2 people and they're equal in all forms, but one person was nominated by someone within their community and the other was nominated by someone outside of their community, it is quite possible that the selection committee may look more favorably on someone nominated by a community member. Just again, the whole emphasis on community with this award, with what they're asking them to look at, that could be seen as being a deciding factor. So I only bring that up just as information. It is not a requirement. You can certainly be outside of someone's community and nominate them. That is okay. But if you're thinking of doing that, if you have the ability to talk to community members or talk to the artist and see if they have someone close to them that you might want to work with on having that person submit the nomination, and you could then do a letter of reference, that may be worth considering as well. So, but I won't tell you what you should say. I'll just give you maybe an idea on how best to apply and what may be received the best. So then we have the application process. So I have the same thing I mentioned already once again. So again, the nominator is encouraged to work collaboratively with their nominee to complete all application materials. But again, before applying on behalf of another individual, the nominator must contact the nominee in advance to fully discuss the guidelines of the award. So the application, the second step, once that's released, that can be completed by the nominated artist. That is fine. They're welcome to fill out their own application. It can also be filled out by the nominator as a collaborative effort with the artist. If the nominator is filling it out on behalf of the artist, definitely you're going to need to talk to the artist and work with them. They should be aware that you're applying. And really, I mean, we're asking them questions, so they would need to be working with you to supply answers to those. There are also some materials that would need to be uploaded as well. So we'll talk about those. Let's see. Okay, so for the application portion, at the beginning, there's information about the folks involved. So I think the first question is the full name of the nominated artist. If the artist may go by a different name professionally than their legal name, I would say ideally that would be the best place to put their professional name or how they're known publicly related to their art. There's going to be a section where we're asking for the nominators, the person who nominated them, their name, email, and phone number. And then there's also going to be a lower section asking for the nominated artist's information. This is where if they have a legal name that's different than their professional name, I would use their legal name down lower with all that contact info. We'll ask for contact information. And then there's also going to be questions for some personal information like date of birth, gender, tribal affiliation, things like that. There are questions that the nominated artist is asked to answer. So we of course want to know what their art medium is. There is a long list of different mediums to choose from, and I know that people often work across multiple mediums. I would say please ideally select up to 3 of your primary art mediums. It's fine if you work within a lot more of those. There is also going to be a space where you can talk about your art mediums and practice. You can certainly talk about, what you do lower. But I think for where you're selecting those primary art mediums, it's easiest for us to understand quickly what the primary mediums you're working in when we're working with all these different applications, so we can more quickly understand, okay, this is what this person does. They work within dance and basketry, for instance, versus having 10 things selected and we're not really sure what their main focus is. We do also ask to define and describe the community where the artist lives and practices. This is again so we can understand the community, what it's like, where are they living, all of that. We do ask them to describe their current plans for working with the community. So, what is the artist currently doing with their community? Do they have anything that they're working on in the near future? I think this question has been worded. This is one question I'm adjusting the verbiage on. I think in the past it's asked about your plans for working with your community for the next 2 years. And to me, that sounds like we're asking for a project based on the next 2 years that you're going to do. I'm going to take out the 2 years because I think it needs to be a little more general. So, like, what are you currently doing? What are you working on in the near future? Or, what are your goals and hopes to continue working with your community? And this is again where we are looking for practicing artists. So if an artist is retired and they're not continuing to work within their community, I would say that application is likely not going to be scored as highly. We do want to know, how does the practice of your art strengthen your community? How are you contributing? What things help? I don't know. What things help community members feel more connected, and as a whole strengthens that. Another question is, how does the practice of your art contribute to passing on the traditions and life ways of the people? So this is really where, how are you promoting cultural traditions? How do those inform your work, and how do those inform the work you do with your community? Are you engaged with members of your community, and how are you engaged? There is also an optional question that asks about, how do you use your art practice as a form of healing? If this is not something you do, that is okay. This question is really, I think it's more of an interest type thing where we're trying to gather information about that. It is still on there and would be reviewed. So, be aware that if you don't have that, that's a question that you won't have anything in there for comparison, but we'll make a point that it's an optional question, and that the panelists shouldn't necessarily score someone lower for not answering that question. So then the last pieces for the application, there are things you will need to upload. So there's going to be your proof of tribal affiliation or descendancy, or et cetera, et cetera. So we do have a section where that's going to need to be uploaded. We do ask for 2 reference letters. So these can be from professional or community references. So it could be someone that the artist has worked with, a former coworker, a manager, something like that. It could be a museum professional if they've worked with people, or other arts professionals. Community references. Are there community members who know or have been involved in what you do? Whether they're just general members of the community, is it maybe someone within tribal government, or within some sort of formal committee or group that does work within your community? These are really just so we can understand best and hear from people in your community about what you do and how you do it, and get a sense of that. We do ask for our resume. Don't feel worried about this. This is not a resume where you're applying for a job. We just really want to understand, what's your path been? What have you done? We will ask for a brief artist bio. You don't need to get super hung up on this either. Again, just something brief. If selected, this is something that could be used publicly in our marketing materials. I will say that, don't worry, if you were selected, I will make sure we touch base about this, and there would be an opportunity to update or edit or completely change it if needed. But this way we at least have something to start from. It could just be a paragraph talking about you know, who you are, what you do, a little bit about your journey. It does not need to be anything super in-depth at all. There's going to be a space to upload your artwork sample images and or files. And there's going to be some more information in the application specific to that. But, you know, if you were working primarily making objects or with visual art, obviously images are going to be the best. If you have audio or video files that you would need to upload, you're able to do that. There are instructions on how best to handle those as well. So you're fine to submit samples as needed. And if there's something you're wanting to submit that we don't include, you can certainly reach out, and I'm happy to help if there is a way we can have that included. Last, we would be asking for an artist photo. So ideally, this would be a headshot, or it doesn't have to be a professional headshot, but this would be something where we can see the artist. And again, if someone is selected for the award, this could be used publicly as well. So that is really a general overview of all of the things going into this. If you have questions about the application or about the nomination process, about eligibility, feel free to reach out. My email is there, my phone number is there. I'm happy to answer questions and help you with something. I would say, you know, I'm also just thinking really quickly about application best practices, which I didn't really have a thing for, but I will say quickly that, you know, keep in mind that there are probably going to be a lot of applications to read. So I would be careful from giving too much information or writing really, really long responses. But also, you know, you don't want to be so brief that people don't feel like they understand what you're saying. So try to think of like a nice balance between, you know, not being super short with your answers, but also, you know, if you're really long and wordy, that can also ultimately sometimes be viewed negatively by panelists in terms of they're like, what are they really trying to say here? You know, it can be a little confusing. I also, I had another thought, and I also just lost that one too. That is okay. If you have a question about these, reach out. Excited to see all of the nominations and applications that we receive. And thank you so much for watching.